The issue of marine debris has become highly salient in the news over the past 2 decades. The commonness of plastics in daily life and widespread accessibility to marine coastal ecosystems allows journalists to reference perspectives from multiple levels of society. These include industry actors, scientists, environmental advocates, and the public when exploring accountability and solutions. My co-author and I seek to find out where journalists place, or rather frame, that responsibility. My name is McKinnon, and I'm a science communicator trainee at the European Commission's Joint Research Center. I recently graduated from Hamburg University, and I've spent my undergrad and grad academic experience on understanding the ways that the media portrays plastic pollution. My co-author, Dr. Imke Hoppe, teaches at Hamburg University and is a researcher for the Center for Earth System Research and Sustainability. Her research focuses primarily on climate and sustainability communication, with an emphasis on media effects and audience studies. On behalf of both of us, thank you for the opportunity to present our ongoing research.
In this presentation, I will cover our motivation, state of research, goals, empirical study, and outlook.
Based on findings from related fields of environmental communication, we assume that journalistic coverage plays a significant role in shaping public awareness. A look into the debate's history demonstrates how public perception of plastic pollution has been intertwined with science since the beginning, and how much public awareness has lagged behind scientific research. Similarly, journalistic coverage continues to play catch-up, sometimes decades behind, to the descriptive language, studies, and solutions put forth by scientists.
Journalists who depict the impact of plastic pollution in the ocean must assimilate and interpret conflicting information from a scientific community that has yet to set global standards of measurement, collective definitions of pollutants, and a common terminology.
The issue's underdeveloped research, combined with a sudden spike in popularity, has created a disconnect between scientists racing to study the issue and journalists who wish to report on recent developments. To make things more complex, journalists must take this issue with seemingly little impact on the daily lives of readers and make it seem relevant and immediate. General surveys on public awareness of the issue have shown that the public has taken interest in the issue and responded in unique ways.
Only a third of U.S. citizens support legislation in the form of a special tax on plastic packaging as a means to deter excessive plastic production. Although a recent survey found that 71% of American millennials view increasing amounts of plastic in the ocean as a pressing issue, no comprehensive and representative survey on American public opinion exists. A majority, at 87%, of Europeans see plastic litter and waste as a prominent issue and have proposed legislation to reduce or eliminate harmful sources of pollution.
However, even if surveys on public perception of EU and US audiences show widespread interest in the issue, it doesn't necessarily mean that public awareness reflects accurately the current state of research on the problem and solutions to it.
For example, a recent study revealed that citizens often fail to recognize common sources of marine pollution despite being aware of the issue in general. A much larger state-funded study found similar results and suggests Europeans view pollution as the biggest threat to ocean health, but also feel uninformed on the specific impacts of pollutants. The most recent Eurobarometer from 2017 demonstrated that the European public attributes more responsibility to national governments and the EU, as well as to companies or industry, than to individuals.
Is this reflected in European journalistic coverage? And does the attribution of responsibility differ between EU and US media? Hardly any studies exist on how the media portrays plastic pollution. Also, we can find no research on how this particular type of media coverage affects the individualistic perceptions, attitudes, and behavioral intentions of audiences.
To explore this research field of media's impact, we first focus on the role of science in the public discourse. Number 1, which role did science and scientific knowledge play in the journalistic coverage of the issue? And a second question on how responsibility is framed in journalistic coverage. To what extent does the attribution of responsibility versus policy regulation differ in the media coverage of both countries?
For the purposes of our empirical design, we have taken a comparative approach to examine the framing of news articles from across states. We will focus on industry states with a significant consumption of plastic and export of plastic waste, specifically the regions of the US and the EU. Instead of looking at the collection of states, we have chosen California and Germany because of their regional environmental initiatives.
California was selected for this study's U.S. region because of the state's influential role in public discourse and policy related to plastic pollution. California's immense natural, cultural, and financial resources make the state's public opinion on environmental issues an interesting case to examine. Germany was selected as a representation of green leadership in the EU. Germany generates some of the highest amount of waste in the EU, but remains the largest recycler of municipal waste. America produces more waste, but recycles only half as much per capita as Germany.
Our two pre-studies gave us a foundational understanding for our empirical design. A comparative approach will give us a more nuanced understanding of the many ways in which journalists portray the issue of marine debris.
The first pre-study looked at how journalists use language to describe the problem of marine debris. This metaphorical discourse analysis identified a list of common words and concepts used to depict the problem. A second pre-study deepened our understanding of how journalists frame responsibility of the issue to different levels of society.
We then expand upon these ideas by incorporating a larger data set and by comparing results between two states. This study identifies textual themes of responsibility within the social structural levels of citizens, companies, and the government.
To examine these themes in the news, we chose a range of news articles that together encompass a broad picture of the public debate. Specifically, we selected at least one outlet to look at with a market focused on either high-quality content, a conservative perspective, a liberal perspective, mass market, regional, and online news. We selected sources for each of these categories for both Germany and California. Our preliminary results have given us great insight into the descriptive language that journalists have appropriated and manufactured.
To illustrate the immensity of the problem, journalists initially appropriated the metaphors garbage patch and trash island. These were embellishments used by the citizen scientist Charles Moore and oceanographer Curtis Ebbesmeyer in order to characterize the mass of man-made flotsam that permeates oceanic gyres. The metaphors were just that, though, not facts, but weak representations of the actual thing, and their inherent misrepresentation undermined the credibility of misinformed policymakers and misled well-intentioned solutions.
Our investigation into the attribution of responsibility further delineated common news approaches to framing the plastics issue. We found that journalists predominantly faulted consumer choice as the cause of widespread plastic pollution, and suggested pro-social behavior as an effective solution. In these cases, journalists would imply that if readers recycled more and refused to buy plastic goods, they could solve the immense problem. Also, journalists would often reference innovative cleanup methods as potential silver bullets to the waste problem.
Our study is still ongoing, and we still have data to consider. However, our preliminary results have some interesting findings.
In regards to visibility, we clearly see that the issue has gained media attention. In Germany, the debate started already in early 1990, and we see a clear, sudden rise in the frequency of plastic pollution-related articles. Interestingly, the media attention has a peak in 2017, shortly before the first ever European strategy for plastics in a circular economy, adopted on January 2018, while the European Commission proposed on May 2018 new EU-wide rules to target the 10 single-use plastic products most often found on Europe's beaches and seas. In the US articles analyzed so far, we see a gradual increase in the number of articles around 2008 and a spike in 2018. Both of these peaks occur during significant milestones in the American plastics debate. In 2008, the US first recognized the microplastics category of pollution in legislation. In 2018, along with new legislation on plastic waste in California specifically, China placed plastic waste export restrictions on the US, forcing industry states to relocate their plastic scrap elsewhere.
our preliminary results remain mostly in line with our pre-studies. Among articles from both California and Germany, we see drastically different descriptions of the size, scope, and form of the problem.
The island metaphor remains, although many articles specifically debunk this myth and adopt new metaphors such as plastic soup. We also continue to see journalists claim that innovative cleanup methods will likely solve the problem, such as the ill-fated Ocean Cleanup Organization. In the 2018 articles, we begin to see more testimonials from scientists in place of insights and opinions from advocacy groups.
What do our preliminary results tell us so far? For one, we have new insights into the ways that journalists frame the issue.
The languages and images used to describe marine debris varies drastically across platforms, dates, and regions. Next, we see a high share of journalistic articles which assign responsibility to individuals. Journalists often give calls to action for citizens to change their consumer behavior or describe the success of small-scale beach cleanups. Finally, we see a drastic increase in the number of articles written about this problem. Whether more information output will improve or alter the situation remains to be seen. Our next step is to expand our research to a larger dataset to better identify patterns of language descriptions.
What can we, here at the conference, do with this information? We can begin to position our scientific output to fill in the gaps and strengthen the story of marine debris based on the public's current understanding of the issue. This will take more communication between scientists across sites and countries. It will also call for more of a dialogue between scientists and journalists. It won't fix the issue, but it will start to get all of the storytellers onto the same page. On behalf of my co-author, Dr. Imke Hoppe, and myself, thank you for inviting us to present our ongoing research. Best of luck with your own research and with the conference.